Hey and welcome, my name is Johannes, this channel is called the Uhrenadler and I'd like to heartily welcome you to a new video. And this time on the bench you can see it's a Rolex Datejust and you can already see there are quite some scratches on the crystal, also on the magnifier, which can be problematic later, but we will see. And this watch was given to me by Mika, a friend of mine, and I think he bought that watch a few months ago. And he absolutely fell in love with this watch and he loves to wear this watch, and he was asking me to have a look at it because he says this watch is running really inconsistently, so sometimes it's holding time very good and sometimes not that good. And this is our task for today, and maybe you and I can solve that problem. Let's hope so. And yeah, you can see the date jumps pretty much at 12 o'clock and everything else. I mean, this watch is heavily worn. Yeah, I think that's not surprising at all. So this watch is most likely from the 1950s, somewhat between 1955 and 1959. So it should be at least, let's say, 70 years old. And for that age, I think it's in a pretty good condition. And first of all, we have to check how the watch is running. Therefore, this is always the first step when getting a new watch. Put it on the Timegrapher, getting some data, maybe getting also some clues how it's running. And I'm always testing different positions. You can see here, dial down, and the rate is between 30 seconds and the amplitude is around 200 degrees. So this is not really bad, but it's not what a Rolex should be like. Let's say the rate should be between, 0 seconds would be perfect, but it should be between 0 and maybe 10 seconds a day. And the amplitude should be at least, let's say 250 degrees. I think that's a good value. And so we have something to do here. But that's not really surprising. I already knew that there has to be something broken or something is not like it should be. And therefore we'll start with opening the case back. And for this Rolex Oyster Perpetual means it's watertight. And for this we need a special opener. You have seen it, and now we can see the movement. But before looking at the movement, we have a look at the case back, and I was counting all the watchmaker marks. And if I'm not totally wrong, the first watchmaker mark is from 1963. And I counted up to 10 watchmaker marks. I mean, the latest one is only written with a pen, so maybe there are even more watchmaker working on it. And the latest one was in 2020. So, I mean, after 5 years, you can service a watch again, but if somebody is doing the service as it should be, normally you don't have to service a Rolex after 5 years. So I'm a bit surprised at this point, because if it was serviced in 2020, I would reckon it should run better. But you don't know if it was a full service or if you just changed the crystal, or maybe he only swapped some gaskets or whatever. We don't know it. So this is always a bit difficult because you see those watchmaker marks and you see dates, and I always assume it's a full service, but you never know. And in this case, we will see what's the problem is, and what we will discover when working our way into this movement. So you can see here the crystal is a bit scratched, I already told you. And the big problem about that is that the magnifying part of the crystal has also a scratch on it. And I'm not sure if we can polish that. But if it's possible, I will try my very best. So because a new crystal, if it's a genuine Rolex crystal, it's, let's say, $200 or even more. And if you're taking an aftermarket crystal, maybe you can get away with between $50 and $100. But, polishing is really easy, and if we can save it, we will do that. So, first of all, we're getting off the hands. I have those little levers. I'm always using some little plastic sheet to keep the dial safe, and afterwards we put the hands into this little membrane box so that the hands do not get damaged. The hands and the dial have a beautiful patina, and I don't want it to get destroyed. You know, especially the lume on the hands. If I destroy that, I would have relume it, and getting the right color is not that easy. And here at this point, I'm a bit confused because I don't see any screws for the dial. So the dial should come off by only prying it. And yeah, for this dial, it's pretty much the case. It's simply pressed on. I'm a bit confused, but maybe because it's an old Rolex and the dial looks pretty much original. So I don't know. I haven't seen that before. Most of the vintage Rolex dials had feeds, but I'm pretty sure this is original one. So yeah. And now we're getting back off the rotor of the automatic work. So this is the part of your watch. When you move your arm, the rotor will always get to the lowest position possible. And by finding this position, the watch is always winded. And this is a huge advantage for automatic watches. They are mostly always fully wound, and if a watch is fully wound or winded, wound, it's running better than if it's only at a, let's say, quarter wind or whatever you would call it. So this is something, or this is a big advantage for automatic watches in comparison to manual wind watches. Yeah. So now we're getting off the part which is responsible for the date switch. And this is something which I really like about Rolex watches. The date always switches immediately. You don't have those, let's say, 10 to 60 minutes where you can see, okay, the date is changing. No, for Rolex, it's changing within a second. So there is not the situation where you can see two dates at the date window, and I really like this. And this is always accomplished in Rolexes by really, really strong springs like this. And if it's a strong spring, you always have to keep in mind it's really, really likely to jump. And if it's jumping, yeah, you have to get your magnet and your light and have to look at the bottom of your workshop. The same is for this spring. This is the setting lever, the yoke spring, not the setting lever spring. It's the yoke spring. And yeah, it's also really easy that you lose those parts. And I've done that in the past quite some often. And yeah, this is the cannon pinion. It's simply pressed on. And afterwards, we're getting on the backside. This kind of automatic movement part this automatic part is something which is new to me, because for modern Rolex, it's not built like that. So yeah, it was something new to me, and I always like if something is new. So working your way into the movement, get some information, get papers and manuals online for the movements, or even watching other videos. Has somebody worked on that movement? And for this movement especially, I haven't found anybody working on it. It's a Rolex 1065. I haven't said that before in this video, I think. So I don't know if there are any videos. I haven't found some. But yeah, it's pretty much the first movement like this on YouTube I've found. But you have to be honest, there is another Rolex movement which is called 1030, which is pretty similar to this movement. So there are only small differences, like the lever for the date adjust on the 1030 has a jewel, on the 1065 there's no jewel. So this is just some kind of optimization which Rolex made over the years when working on their movements. And yeah, this is something for what Rolex is really famous for. They are using their movements for a long period of time. And this means that their movement is most of the time really, really well made. So they are made to last for long, long times. And they are simply well engineered. This is something which I love about Rolex. So you can see they think about how to, they think about when constructing those movements, how can you easily work on them, and you will feel it. I mean, working on ETA, for example, is pretty much the same. They are also great, and Psychos also have great movements. I don't want to say they are worse in any terms, but for me, working on Rolex is something I really enjoy. And so it's always a pleasure to work on them. And yeah, you see this little wheel is the transmission wheel to the second hand, and simply pressed on top of the drivetrain bridge. And now we're getting off the ratchet wheel. The ratchet wheel interacts with the click. The click is this little part below the ratchet wheel. This is the ratchet wheel. And this is the click. So, or it's the screw which is securing the click, and now it is the click. The click is simply called the click because when winding a watch, you hear those characteristic click sounds, and therefore it's called click. I mean, that makes things really easy. I would wish in more aspects of life it would be as easy to understand the names of things, but in this case it's pretty easy. And this is the transmission wheel from the crown to the ratchet wheel. So when turning your crown, you will turn this wheel, and therefore you will wind your watch, or you will wind your mainspring. This one is the bridge for the pellet fork. The pellet fork is the part which releases the energy of your mainspring by little ticks. And maybe it's the part which is most fascinating about those movements, how it is constructed and how it is made. I really like the pellet fork. I mean, there are quite a few explanations online where you can understand how it works. In general, you could say there's a specific shape of the jewels on the pellet fork which will make it possible that the wheel or the drivetrain will spin for a certain amount with each change of the position of your pellet fork, and this is something which is incredible. And you can see here the bearing on the mainspring barrel at the mainspring barrel bridge, or mainspring bridge, however you would call it, is a bit too wide. So there's some kind of end shake. We have to keep that in mind if we can use our staking tool and maybe, get the hole a little smaller. But you can see here there's a little piece of metal, and I was instantly confused where it comes from. And when having a look at the underside of the mainspring bridge, oh no. Oh, can you see what I can see? Yeah. There is a little purple part, and this is from one of the jewels which is broken. Oh no, and the metal part, I don't know where it comes from. We have to see. Right now I don't know where it comes from, but maybe the jewel broke because of the metal part has broken. I don't know. And maybe this is the reason why the watch is not running consistently. So maybe the metal part sometimes was at the position where it's really bad for the watch, and sometimes it does not matter. No matter what, this means we have something to do which I haven't done in the past. We have to change the jewel on this mainspring bridge. And we have to address that later. But, this is all what it's about at this hobby. Working your way into the movement, see what is broken, and then you have to decide, am I able to fix it, or do I have to order a spare part? I mean, in this case, you have two possibilities. The one is you're ordering a jewel and simply replace the jewel, which is not that easy, or you're ordering a replacement bridge, and simply replace the bridge. So I have looked online what a bridge would cost me, and it's more than $200, which is pretty much, and it's just because of the fact that this movement is as old and there are no new parts for it. So you have to see if you can get new old stock parts, which would mean they are pretty new but never used, and I haven't found parts. So you have to use parts from a movement which are in a good condition, and this would cost more than $200. And maybe we can avoid that by simply buying a new jewel, which is maybe up to 20 or 30 bucks. Yeah, this is also really expensive for a part that small, but we will see. First of all, we're gonna get the mainspring out of the mainspring barrel. This is the whole part where the energy in your watch is stored, and when winding your watch, you're storing energy by winding the mainspring. And yeah, if your mainspring is wound, the watch should run. And this mainspring, I must be honest, looks pretty good. So maybe it was changed in the last service. I'm not sure. But now we're gonna have to use our jewel set or jewel tool. It's from Sites. And first of all, we have to get the jewel out of the mainspring bridge. And therefore you have this little pusher, which has some kind of a spring on top. So this is just due to the fact that you can center the bridge on the tool and then press the jewel out of the bridge. You will see it. Now everything fits, and now we're gonna push the jewel simply out of the bridge because it's simply press fitted. And I had a look if there are any Rolex jewels online to find for this movement. I haven't found them. Now you could hear it. I simply pressed them out, and you can see the jewel broke when pushing it out because it was already broken. And yeah, now as it is removed from the bridge, we have the possibility to measure its dimensions, and yeah, we can see if we can find a replacement jewel here. And its diameter is 1.1 millimeters and the inner hole is 0.4 millimeters. And I haven't found a jewel with those dimensions. I just have found one which has a diameter of 1.2 millimeters, and that means we have to enlarge the hole where the jewel is pressed in, and therefore you can see I have those little broaches, and I marked where the broach reaches 1.19 millimeters, so it's a bit smaller than the diameter of the jewel, and I will enlarge the hole as wide that the jewel I will be able to press fit it into the bridge. I also have to remove some of the material here. This is just to be sure that everything is flat and plain. Just clean it by using some Rodico so that there is no material left from our broaching and removing of the material. And now we can see if the jewel fits in. It does not fit in. This is exactly what I have planned because I have not made the hole as big as the diameter of the jewel, and so I have to press fit it in, and we can listen if we get it in, and I think that looks good. Yeah, so now the jewel has been replaced, and having a look at it under the microscope, it looks pretty good, looks flat, looks good, clean, no cracks, most importantly. And now we can get back to our repair procedure by cleaning it. I have a kind of a two-part cleaning procedure established for myself. First of all, I'm always cleaning all the parts in my ultrasonic cleaner. Some people only use ultrasonic cleaner, which is totally good and enough, but I have made the experience in the past that if I'm only using ultrasonic, some parts are not clean enough if there is really much dirt on it. So I'm using a kind of a two-part procedure. So after being the parts in the ultrasonic cleaner, I put them in my watch cleaning machine, and yeah, afterwards all parts should be clean. And I really like this kind of cleaning procedure. You can see here. Again, I had my little helper, so these are not my hands. They are pretty much smaller than mine. The watch cleaning machine is pretty easy. There are 3 or 4 different jars. The first has the cleaning solution, and then there are 3 rinse jars The first one is a rinse solution from also Elma. The second one is the same rinse solution, but it's not as dirty as the first one because, you know, the first jar gets most of the dirt and the second one is pretty clean. And the third jar is just some isopropanol alcohol. And the function of isopropanol alcohol is that the water part of the rinse and the cleaning solution will get off the parts. This is what it's all about. And the last step of the cleaning machine is just a drying cycle. And after this, all the parts should be clean, but maybe some of you already noticed that I don't put some parts into the cleaning machine. And for most of the watches, these are the balance and the balance cock and the balance spring and the pallet fork. The pallet fork because the jewels are glued in, and putting them into those aggressive chemicals which I use in my cleaning machine, there is always a risk of losing the jewels, and if you're losing the jewels you have to re-glue them with something which is called shellac. And to be honest, I have not done this, and I think it's pretty complicated. But nevertheless, when everything is cleaned, we can get back to our parts, and there are some parts as the escape wheel, the pallet fork, and the reversing wheels. I'm gonna epilam them. Epilamizing is simply coating the parts. So everywhere where epilamized coating is on the parts, the oil will not be likely to be on the surfaces. So now you have seen, okay, the whole part is epilamized, so the oil will not stay on the part. Therefore, I'm using the pithwood to remove the coating on the pivots of the escape wheel here, and also on some other parts. And when the watch is running, I will run it without oil for a few minutes, and this kind of running will remove the coating also on the pivots. And after this running, I will oil the pivots. This is pretty much what is epilamizing about. Maybe some of you in the comments can tell me if you understood what I'm talking about. You know, sometimes it is like I've done this so often, and the more you do things, the easier it gets to understand them. I don't know if this is totally right, because I don't know if I really understand the things or if I'm just getting used to it. This is in so many parts of the life. But in this case, yeah, it is what it is, right? So let's get back to our watch. And the first part of our assembling step is getting the mainspring back into the mainspring barrel. And therefore I have those mainspring winders, which are, by the way, really expensive. If you're new to the hobby, you don't need this. Just buy new mainsprings. They are, most of the times, they're between 20 or 50 bucks. For expensive watches, they are 50 bucks. Or if it's a really rare mainspring, it's 50 bucks. But for most watches, you already get new mainsprings for 10 bucks. And so if you start working on them, you know, the mainspring winders is up to $1,000, something about that. And I mean, it's easy to to see how many new mainsprings you can buy for those mainspring winder sets. But nevertheless, those mainspring winders are awesome because you get your mainspring back into those winders, and you can reuse the mainsprings. And this is also one of the most fascinating feelings of mainsprings, of watchmaking. When you get your mainspring from the mainspring winder into your barrel, there is such a fascinating sound and satisfying sound. You will hear it in a few seconds. But before we do that, we have to put some grease on the walls of the mainspring barrel. This is just to make sure there is enough friction between the mainspring barrel and the mainspring. So, I mean, maybe not enough friction, but the correct amount of friction. And we also have to oil the whole of our mainspring barrel, and we have to oil the cleaned mainspring. You have seen me cleaning the mainspring just using isopropanol alcohol, and as we clean it, we need to re-lube it. This is just some grease. By the way, all of the stuff I'm using is linked in the video description. I'm really putting everything down there. But before explaining me that, listen to this sound. I really like that sound. I mean, every watchmaker likes it. I have not found a single watchmaker who does not like this. Maybe it's a top 3 feeling of getting the mainspring back into the mainspring barrel. The best feeling is still when the balance wheel starts kicking up. But nevertheless, always think about the correct oiling. And here you can see those kind of red oil is Möbius HB 1300. As I already told you, I've linked everything in the description. Somebody was also asking me what kind of automatic oilers I'm using. They are also linked in the description. Everything is linked there. So if you're interested in starting this hobby, you can buy everything here. But I would recommend you, if you start with this hobby, I mean, I guess everybody of you knows maybe the biggest channel on YouTube, which is called Wrist Watch Revival, which makes, by the way, the best videos about this topic on the platform. Maybe there's also Red Dead Restoration, which is also a really fascinating channel. But nevertheless, if you start this hobby, Marshall from Wristwatch Revival has those starting kits. Maybe I will link them in the description if I'm allowed to. I don't know, but I think I should be. So if you start this hobby, just use the kits from Wristwatch Revival from Marshall. They are simply awesome. So, as the videos are too. So, by the way, yeah. So, if you think these videos are good, I just could highly recommend you watching these videos. And yeah, this is no ad. I don't really think he knows my videos. So, yeah, just watch them. And I think you really, really like them. But enough about that. Just keep our focus back on this movements here. We are working our way into the drivetrain, and this is where things sometimes gets a bit tricky, because you see here you have the escape wheel, the second wheel, the third wheel, the fourth wheel, and all those pivots, and you have to align them when setting the bridge. And sometimes this is really difficult. Sometimes it may even take up to 1 hour to position the bridge in its right place, but we will see how it works here. And for this movement, the escape wheel is also covered by a capstone, and I've used my automatic oiler. Here you can see the right amount of oil is in it, and afterwards we can position the bridge. And okay, I'm not sure, but yeah, it immediately fell into its correct position. And this is, I don't want to say this is only for Rolex movements the case, but I've experienced that for Rolex movements very often, and this is a great feeling if you don't have to work on it for hours or minutes. And yeah, but now we can address the problem of the end shake of the mainspring barrel. I'm using my stacking tool here. You can see it here. The stacking tool, there are different inlays for it, and you have to use the right ones, which have tips which are a little bit smaller than the hole which you want to stake. And so you have 2 tips which are at the bottom at the and the top of the hole, and by hammering on those parts you can shrink the hole a little bit. And this is what I'm doing here. I'm slightly tapping the pins and always turning the bridge bit by bit, and it's getting better, or it's getting smaller and smaller. And yeah, if you do that too often, or if you're tapping too strong, the hole will get too small. And to be honest, in most of the cases when doing this, the hole is too small after stacking. But this is not a problem. This is good, trust me. So if the hole is smaller than necessary, you don't have a problem, because you just can simply use some broaches to make the hole a bit bigger again. And in this case, you can see the bridge does not fit on the mainspring barrel, and therefore, as I already told you, you can use those broaches here. And sometimes I'm marking myself how deep do I have to go with those broaches into the hole, but sometimes I also do it only by feeling, because I mean, if the hole is too big, you simply use the stacking tool again, and yeah, that's not a too big of error. And yeah, no matter what, you can see here, it immediately went the right way, and you can see there is no end shake. This is, yeah, to be honest, this is exactly like it should be. And before continuing, I'm putting some oil on the pivots of the drivetrain, not on the escape wheel. On the escape wheel also I'm putting, but not on the balance wheel, which has to run dry, or on the pallet fork, which has to run dry. And I'm always oiling at this point of the process, because you can simply spin the wheels freely, and if there's oil, I'm always spinning a few turns so that the oil can spread around the pivots. I know some people also put the oil on it when the balance is installed. I mean, there is not a correct way you do it. There is just a way you have experienced in the past, which works the best for you. And yeah, this way I was used to do it that way. I mean, if you look at YouTube, there are so many great channels who are working on watches, and nearly everybody does it in a different kind of way. You could say it's a kind of a style for every watchmaker. And yeah, I mean, there is not the one and only way you should do it. And now we're gonna install the transmission wheel for the ratchet wheel. This is secured by 2 screws. There is also a possibility to secure it by only 1 screw. And if you're using 1 screw, it should be reverse threaded. But now you can see everything is spinning freely. And before we're getting our balance wheel back into the watch, we're gonna assemble the dial side of the watch, and therefore you need the sliding clutch here and the winding wheel, and install it on the dial side. This part of the watch is, by the way, called keyless works. It's simply because you don't need a key, and for old pocket watches you mostly needed a key to wind the watch, and for modern watches you don't really need it, right? So, and now you can see I'm using those kind of blue grease or oil, whatever you want to call it. And in my last video I promised I will know what number or what's the name of this oil, because I'm always saying the blue grease. By the way, it's also linked as blue grease in the video description, and the name is Möbius 9504. And yeah, but most of the time I simply call it the blue grease. And now we're gonna get back the setting lever. The setting lever is screwed from the other side of the watch, and this makes it a little bit tricky here. You have to secure it by your finger holding on the setting lever, and then screw it down from the other side. So this is some kind of a tricky procedure, and yeah, I don't like that kind of setting lever. I personally prefer the setting levers which are installed from the dial side without screwing, but it is like there are those 2 features, and I'm pretty sure the screwed down setting lever has also its advantages, which I don't know personally here, but yeah, it is what it is. And if you've worked a few times on it, you will get used to it, and this is what it's all about in watchmaking. So if you start this hobby, which I highly recommend, at the beginning it's a hobby with a high potential of frustration because losing parts, watches will not start running, and all those parts is pretty normal. The first watch I was working on, it's not running up to now, and it's lying here in my workshop for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, and it's not running up to now. I mean, I could order new parts, but I always keep it here. I will never put it in the trash. I will always keep this kind of movement which I was never able to restore, just to remind myself to stay focused. And there is always the possibility that something went in the wrong direction. And if you are highly focused, it's less likely that you will make errors. I mean, they can always happen, but watchmaking is something where you have to really be concentrated. I'm often working late at night because of some little people in my house who likes my attention when it's day or when the daylight is up. And so I have to work when the house is pretty much sleeping, or when everybody fell asleep. And therefore I always have to work late at night. And the most mistakes I make are when I'm tired. So sometimes it's better to stop and say, okay, I will continue tomorrow, and not to do anything when you're not concentrated. And I mean, I'm an amateur, this is pretty much just my hobby. I'm just doing this for fun. I'm also doing those videos for fun. I don't earn any money with my videos. It's just a big hobby for me. And I want to keep it as long as possible, entertaining for me, and hopefully for you too. And therefore it's good to avoid those frustrating situations. I don't know if you quite get what I'm talking about, but maybe you can let me know. What do you think about it? And now we're getting back the balance back into the watch, and now we can see if we're gonna get it running. And yes, it's running. Nice. I like that feeling so much. There's barely a better feeling than when a watch starts kicking up again. And yeah, you can see the watch is running really good. You can see it by the amplitude of the balance wheel. And now we have to oil the capstone of the balance wheel. Therefore, we have to remove the shock spring here. The shock spring is pretty much the spring which will be responsible if you're dropping your watch, that the pivot of the balance wheel does not break. The pivot of the balance wheel is pretty much the most fragile part of your watch. And back in the days, when there were no shock spring on the balance wheels, this was something which was really likely to break. And now we're gonna oil. After cleaning, we're oiling the capstone and putting the jewel back into the balance cock. And you can see on the balance cock there is also written something. 1/4 of a turn is equal to 10 seconds of time changing. And you will see later, or maybe we'll have to use that later, when regulating the watch, we have to change the screws which are on the balance wheel. So screwing the screws which are positioned on the balance wheel inwards will make the watch running faster, and screwing them outwards will make turning the balance slower. It's pretty much like in ice skating, if you're doing those pirouettes. If you keep your arms at your body, you will spin faster than when keeping your arms as far away from your upper body as possible. So I think that's something which everybody experienced and is pretty easy to understand. And now we're gonna press on, or we have pressed on, the transmission wheel for the wheel which is responsible for the seconds hand here. Just put that back in, also oiled. I'm using here Möbius 9010. This is the kind of colorless or transparent oil. Maybe there is a slight green color in this oil, but it's more transparent than the red oil, which is Möbius 1300. As I've already told you, everything is linked in the video description. Just look it up, and if you have any questions about my tools, which I have not linked, just let me know. And now we're gonna get back to the automatic part of the movement, and I'm just polishing here those pins because there were some kind of scratches and dents on it, and I'm just using those little polish sticks, which I will also link you in the video description, and then afterwards we're gonna clean it and oil it, and those pins will look like new again. And also for the reversing wheels, you can see there are some scratches on the pivots, and after polishing them they look much better. So you know, when there are no scratches on it and it will spin it and it will be oiled, they will run better and even more lightly. Also, we have to oil the reversing wheels in here. You know, this is something, or this is a high friction part. I mean, maybe it's a bit too much of Möbius 1300 here, but I think at this part of the watch, it's not that worse if you're using a bit too much oil. You know, at the pivots of your drivetrain, you should not use too much oil. It's better to use less than more, or less is more, however you want to call it. But for the automatic part of the watch, it's not that bad if you're using a bit too much oil. You know, you should not use like way too much, but a bit is okay. And here you can see me assembling the automatic part, and this one is really tricky to position. I had to position it on the edge of my little emboss here, and you can see it worked out pretty good at this point. And we now have to simply screw it down, and the automatic bridge is assembled. Now we're oiling also the upper pivots, which have not been oiled up to this part, oiling the jewel which we reordered and pressed in new. And now we will see if everything fits together, if we did the job the right way. And you can see the pivot fits perfectly in the watch. So yes, now I can say I got for the first time a new jewel in a bridge, and you can see everything works fine, everything is spinning, and that's good. Everything is working. Now a little check how the watch is running. Rate is still too high because we have not regulated it. And amplitude, 300 degrees is great, but it was not fully wound, and it was at 308 degrees. So maybe we have to look at it later, because yeah, too high of an amplitude can also be bad, but we will have to see. Yeah, first of all, we're gonna install the dial side of the watch. Here, you know, I already told you there is this spring and the part which is responsible for the immediate change of the date. There is the lever which I'm putting the grease on here. This is the date setting lever, and this spring, which is a really strong spring, I'm gonna slide under this cover plate, which I've already screwed down. And this is something which is really good, because you're sliding it under something. The risk of flying away is not that high. I don't know if the assembly process is to be meant like that, but when working on movements for the first time, it's always like, okay, how will I do it? And how will I keep the risk as low as possible that parts will fly around my workshop? And yeah, for this movement, you can see the date change was immediately. For this movement, I was considering this as the best solution. And now we're gonna reinstall the date wheel. Mika asked me, there are little dots on the date wheel. He does not want me to remove the patina, which I would not be able to, but he asked me if I can remove those little dots if it's just dirt on the date wheel. But you see me using Q-tips and Rodico. I could not remove those dots. And so, yeah, I think we have to keep the date wheel as it is. I mean, it's patina, you know, it's kind of history of the watch, and therefore it's okay. And so we're positioning the date wheel. And afterwards we can press on the dial, which is, as you've already seen in the disassembly process, only pressed on. And I mean, it holds really good. It's not loose. But yeah, you've seen the date change, which was pretty immediately or at once. And I just did that because when the date changed, I know it has to be midnight, or it should be. And so when the date changed, I'm gonna set the setting at the hands when positioning them on the watch at 12 a.m. No, p.m. Sorry, it's p.m. I should get used to it, but sometimes I'm a bit confused. Yeah, now the hands are installed, and now we can install the rotor of the automatic winds. And there is a big jewel here, you can see. Fortunately, that one is not broken because it would be really expensive as well. And yeah, I made a little mistake here. You will see in a few seconds. The rotor, it's easier to install the rotor when the automatic bridge is not installed on the movement. And yeah, so I had to remove the bridge again from the movement and just put the rotor and the automatic bridge on this little table, which I put here on my embers, and just pressing the spring, which is holding the rotor here, onto the pivot. And this is also something, I'm lucky I did not lose this little clamp here, but yeah, it's highly likely that you can lose it. Yeah, no matter what, now we have to reinstall the bridge. And you can see I did leave the hands and the dial on the watch, and this is the reason why I put this plastic sheet onto the movement, between the movement holder and the movement. In this case, it's okay. You know, I don't scratch anything by doing it that way. And I was just using it for a few seconds to install the automatic bridge. And you can see the automatic bridge, when it spins, the ratchet wheel is turning and everything works. And now we can get back to the case and the crystal and the bezel. And you see the crystal is scratched, and we are using some masking tape here and a little cutting knife here to get between case and bezel. This is something which is, for Rolex models, a pretty easy way to remove the bezel. And when there is a little gap, you can use your case opening knife and simply pry off the bezel. And when the bezel is off, the crystal gets off the same way. Because the crystal is simply pressed on by the bezel on the case. And therefore, yeah, this is the way you should do it. And you can see also that I removed the gasket of the case tube, or the crown tube. And I'm also removing the gasket of the case back. Now we're gonna get off the crown tube. You need a special tool for that as well, which is, by the way, also really expensive with most of the parts, and I've linked them in the video description. I don't know if I already told you. I mean, leave a comment down below if you're thinking I'm mentioning it too often, that I've linked everything in the video description. But it was it was a lot of work to find all the links. So, and I think it's useful for most of you. But nevertheless, now we're gonna use some sanding paper with very fine grit. We're starting at a grit of 2000, and we're also sanding the magnifying part of the crystal, but only at a really, really slight amount. And you can see I'm working my way from 2000 a grit to 3000 to 5000. And after 5000, I'm using those polywatch polish and a microfaber cloth, I think it is called like that, and just polishing the crystal. And by doing that, it's pretty much you're working your way from coarse to fine, and you can see the crystal and also the magnifying part looks really good. And you have to be careful, because using too much, or if you're using the sanding paper too much, the magnifying part will look odd. And in this case, it looks really much the way it should look like. And you can also see using my polyrette here to slightly polish the watch. Mika told me he does not want me to remove all the scratches, but slight scratches, if I can remove them, he would be really, really happy. You know, he wants to wear this watch as a daily watch, so it will get scratches nevertheless. But he said if I can remove a lot of the scratches, he would be fine with it. And I know some of you are like, no, the watch should keep all its traces and it's kind of the history of the watch. And I'm totally fine with that, but I also like if a watch looks really good, not like new. I mean, we could work on this watch to get it as close as possible to a new state, but this was not the goal here. And to be honest, there are other channels which are much better than me. For example, Vintage Watch Service is a channel. I know him from Instagram. He's doing the best jobs on case restorations. This is simply awesome. Just watch him on YouTube. And yeah, by the way, I've already mentioned it. If you want to see some behind the scenes stuff or want to contact me, ask questions, the best way to do is on Instagram. I'm called Uhrendantler on Instagram as well. So you can find me under the same name as here on YouTube. And I would really highly appreciate it if you follow me on Instagram too. And yeah, I would also highly appreciate it if you hit the like button on this video. But I think if you like that video, you will do it nevertheless, if I mention it or not. So this is another topic. And yeah, I also wanted to say a big thank you, because I was not able to find the broken jewel on this watch here online, and I contacted some guy which is called SK Watchmaker. I think his real name is Samuel, on Instagram, and he's such a nice guy. Every time he's a professional watchmaker, and every time I have questions, he always helps me. He's such a nice guy. I must say, he's a great guy. So if you want to do me a big favor, for me it's more important than a like or a follow or subscribing. Just follow this guy on Instagram. He's doing incredible stuff. He's also working on his own movements, and yeah, he's an incredible guy. I will link him in the video description. So the video description is getting pretty long at this point. Yeah, you can see me here. I was replacing the gaskets on the crown as well. You know, it's a vintage watch. I already told Mika, the owner of this watch, that I cannot guarantee him to get this watch watertight again, and as far as I'm concerned, he does not want to wear this watch while swimming or diving, which you should never do with a vintage watch in my opinion. But yeah, he does not want it. But you know, changing the gaskets, at least it will be good if he's getting out in the rain or if he's washing his hands. So they should keep the watch tight for this little daily struggles. And yeah, you can see me getting back the watch into the movement, and here you can see I found the broken part. The case clamps of the movements, they were broken, and this was the broken part I found when disassembling. And now we know what happened. So maybe the last watchmaker broke the clamp, and after a few months or weeks or even only days of wearing, the broken part of the case clamp worked its way into the movement, and maybe this was the reason why the jewel broke, and maybe this was also the reason why the watch did not run quite well. And now you can see I'm checking the watch, and the amplitude here, 320 degrees, is a bit high, and I was concerned. And now you can see something which I've experienced in the past. I'm putting the watch on the Timegrapher, and now I'm spinning the rotor, which is what happens when you wear the watch. And when spinning the rotor, the mainspring will get wind even more. And now you can see the watch does not run as it should be. And this is simply because the mainspring gets wound too much. And you will see it immediately. The amplitude now is 340 degrees, and this is too high. The amplitude can be too high also. And this is a problem because the balance is spinning too far and is hitting the pallet fork from the opposite side. And this is not what it should be, and the watch can get also damaged by this. And I think the reason for that is the last watchmaker working on this watch was using the wrong mainspring. And therefore we have to remove the mainspring and maybe install a new mainspring on it. But before we're doing that, I know what the dimension of this mainspring is, and it should be 1.1 millimeter thick, and you can see here it is 1.11 or 1.12 millimeters thick. And yes, this can make the difference between a too strong and a too weak mainspring. You know, those movements, they are highly precision things, movements. And if there is something the way it should not be like, it can make a difference. And in this case, I've ordered the correct mainspring. It's a new one. You can see it, and I'm simply pressing it back into the mainspring barrel. And then it should be better. And I'm skipping the whole part of disassembling the whole watch because I had to disassemble it one more time, also clean it and oil it new. And basically I had to do everything you have seen up to this point. I had to do it a second time. But, you know, if you do it once, the second time will always get faster and you get more experience. So nevertheless, it's not that big of a drama. And in this case, I'm just showing you me getting the new mainspring back into the mainspring barrel and pressing the lid on. And hopefully the amplitude after the service will be in the right ballpark, if you would call it like that. And Rolex says the amplitude after a service has to be between 270 and 300 degrees. So it should not be higher. And this is the reason why Rolex says the amplitude should not be too far above 300. So if it's 305 degrees, that does not matter. But if it's getting above 320 degrees, maybe you can have a problem. And in this case, maybe the last watchmaker, and here you can see me regulating the watch, which I told you earlier, by screwing those screws a bit out on two positions. There are two screws. They are on opposite positions. And afterwards you can see 290 degrees of amplitude and a rate of 0 seconds a day. So this is simply awesome. This is what a watch should look like. And do not forget, this watch is maybe 70 years old and it's running like a new watch now. And maybe the last watchmaker, he had not addressed the problem of the high end shake of the mainspring barrel. You know, if the end shake is too high, the amplitude will be a bit lower, and he thought, I don't address this problem. I just simply use a little bit of a stronger mainspring. You can do that, of course, but this is not what you should do if you want to be a watch as healthy as possible. And I don't know if it was like that. You know, sometimes it's just speculation at this point, but yeah. Maybe this is a solution. You can let me in the comments what you think about this whole situation. Nevertheless, this watch was quite some work. I did not expect it to be that much work, but you know, we've learned something new and the watch is running, and it was worth every minute I was working on. And at this point, everything which is left for me to say is that if you want to see some close-up shots and maybe some videos of the serviced watch, just follow me on Instagram. When releasing this video, I will post a few clips of this watch on Instagram so you can see it. And I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you do so, I already told you, I would highly appreciate if you leave a like. And what's left? I think we were successful by restoring this beautiful vintage Rolex. And I want to wish you a wonderful day. And thank you for watching, and bye.